very important for me to give a shout out to our literary curators, because the mission we have given them is to take you on journeys that are topical, timeless, and transformational. I believe that that mission is very unique in the world of literary festivals. In doing this, I'm very proud that IAAC now for 8 years has been at the forefront of promoting regional translations out of India and children's literature out of India. So imagine our special delight that today we can begin our keynote talk with the Booker Prize International winner, translation of Rape Samadhi, Tomb of Science. I read her background in Daisy. You're like Leonardo da Vinci, Renaissance person, acclaimed writer, artist, translator. Her works include Upendranath Ashk, a critical biography, The Little Book of Terror, what a title, and then the novel Taste. Her highly acclaimed translations include, among others, Upendranath Ashk, Falling Walls, and Bishop Sani's Thomas, published in Penguin Classes. We asked Daisy as to who should be her moderator, and she suggested Professor Merve Emre. And when we looked at her background, I fell off my chair. I literally fell out of my chair. And what I would say to you, whatever I say about her is a disservice to her. So please, there's going to be some homework I'm going to give you. Certainly go read Daisy Rockwell's writings and read more than 2%, but also immediately Google Professor Merve Emre. So she is at the University of Oxford. She has earned a BA from Harvard and a PhD from Yale. She is the author of Paraliterary, The Making of Bad Readers in Post-War America, The Ferrante Letters, and The Personality Growers, which was selected as one of the best books of 2018 by the New York Times. Her forthcoming book, which I certainly will pre-order, is titled Love and Other Useless Pursuits. So, both of our superstars here have accomplishments that are beyond compare, but I'm going to get a picture to hear from them. So, without much ado, let me turn over the program to our moderator.
Daisy and I met in the first place is because I was on the panel of the Booker judges who selected Tucson as our which is how we met. And when we were having breakfast this morning, I said that we've seen each other a number of times now, and we've never officially been allowed to discuss the book because of various judging regulations. So I'm so excited to do that with you today, Daisy. And I thought maybe we could start with you giving us two kind of big overviews. One, tell us a little bit about how you ended up becoming what I think of as the foremost English language translator from Hindi. And then tell us a little bit about Tucson and how it is that you came to work on this translation.
Right, is this working? Yes, okay. So, thank you all for coming today. And I'll give a little background. My career as a translator has been sort of, a bumpy path because there's not any clear template about how a person becomes a translator. Most of the time, there are programs where you can get an MFA in translation, but most translators I know came upon it in a strange way. And so I think for me, I was studying Hindi in college, and I was in an advanced class, and a teacher gave us an assignment where we were each given a passage from a work of Hindi literature, just short, like a page, according to our abilities, because we were at vastly different levels in Hindi, and I was the baby in this class. Everybody else was far beyond me. So I was given the first page of a Hindi novel called Andheri Bantamre by Mohan Rakesh, which is like close, dark rooms, and it's a kind of claustrophobic novel written in the 60s about life in Delhi and kind of alienation from families and so on. So I was given the first page of this, and I had never translated in a literary translation way. I love studying languages, and I studied Latin since 7th grade, so I can't fit Caesar's like board, and that is not something to spark joy really in most people. So I translated this one page, and it was just kind of eye-opening. It was sort of like, I think of it as my origin moment, and it's not an exciting origin moment because I was just sitting in a class from translating a page. But it was sort of like, when you feel the webs forming in your wrists, and you realize that they're going to stick to the ceiling, and you might be able to pull yourself up. So that was my moment. And then since then, it's been up and down. I took a translation seminar at the University of Chicago with A.K. Ramanujan, the great translator, folklorist, poet, thinker, amazing person. Everything he said I still remember because he had this way of speaking that was like pearls of wisdom, just kind of pouring out of his mouth. My favorite quote from him was, he would say, "Every footnote is a confession of failure." So that's why you never find a footnote anymore. Because he meant you have to say it in the text. And academics, and I am trained as an academic, I have a PhD in South Asian Studies, but academics always want to tell you the extra stuff, all the research they did, and they want to give you more and more and more, even if it's irrelevant. So he's saying, don't do it, and if it needs to be said, you can say it in the text, and so that's what I do. And as an interesting aspect of this book, is that in Hindi, it's half the length. Yeah, it's not that I expanded it that much, the page format is different, and I put spaces between the chapters and breaks, which they didn't do. There's a lot of technical reasons, but I think another reason is because I don't use footnotes. So I translate and explain things within the text if I need to, and that also kind of expands the text.
So how many people here have had a chance to read To Exam, either in parts or in parts? So we have a couple. So I think we would benefit, Daisy, from you giving everyone a kind of, you're finished?
I'm struggling to read it in Hindi.
Oh, you're sorry. Yes. But yes.
It's not an easy book.
We were actually going to, yes, but we'll come to that in a second because Daisy has gotten a number of messages from people who's struggling to read it in Hindi, go to the English, and then go back to the Hindi. And so it's a very kind of interesting act of a translation teaching you how to read both itself and the original. But just for people who don't know about To Exam, Daisy, maybe you could give a kind of synopsis of its 3 parts.
Right, so it's divided into 3 sections. And the first one, many people on Instagram complain that the main character does not get out of bed for 200 pages or so. And so I love reading books to grammar reviews, even if they're negative, at all. This person will get out of bed. I'm not reading anymore. DNF. You know, did not finish this if you don't read these movies. But so the main character is a 79-year-old woman whose husband has just passed away. She's so depressed she doesn't know what to go on. And so she's lying in bed facing the wall. But since she lives in a joint Indian family, there's just people everywhere around her. And so what's going on in that first section is all the things around her, all the people around her. And it's also a very digressive book, so there's lots of extra information and the author will even say this story is not really relevant, or this character isn't relevant, but I'll tell you about them anyway. So then this...
And that first section is called Ma's Back.
Yes.
You translated it as Ma's Back.
Yeah, I added a pun there, because she comes back.
She comes back.
Yeah, so Ma is back, or it is her back that we see. Yeah. Because in the spirit of Gitanjali's writing, I felt allowed to add puns if I wanted to. Because some of her puns were lost, so it's called compensation in translation, where you make up for it in other ways. The second one is called Sunlight, and this is where she moves into her daughter's house. And for those of you with Indian backgrounds, you know that this is sort of a bit of a taboo, because she's been living with her eldest son. And she suddenly says, yeah, I'm going to baby's house, I'm going to my daughter's house. And everybody's like, oh no, what does this mean? And the son feels kind of really upset about it. So she moves in with her daughter, who's very bohemian, and she has this rebirth. And she also has what seems to be a new best friend, who's a hijra, a transgendered person named Rosie. And the daughter, who's so bohemian, feels kind of shaken by this and challenged, but she suddenly feels a little bit conservative about the whole thing. And then the third section, and here's where I don't want to get into spoilers for you, but it's, I call this another pun I made up, I called it back to front, because that means like turned around, but also turns out she goes back to Pakistan. Like, we didn't know this, but she, pre-partition, had lived in Lahore. So she goes to the border, to the front, and then crosses it. And so the last section is where she rediscovers her past, and I won't give away anymore.
Okay, thank you. That is a wonderful, wonderful synopsis. I actually want to play off of the comment that this gentleman made about reading the Hindi, because one thing you notice when you read the English is that there is still quite a bit of Hindi in it. And according to your translator's note in the end, when you read the Hindi, there's quite a bit of English in it. And so it is a kind of properly polyvocal novel in that sense. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you thought about what to preserve in each language, what to translate, what your approach was really to bringing out the kind of multi-dimensional aspect of this novel?
I mean, I could kind of write a whole book about that, because my strategies are really complicated, and I kind of developed them over the years, and I would like to say, as a precursor to the way that I translate now, I started out my career, as it were, I don't think it was a career really, I started it out as thinking I was translating for non-Indian people, right? Because I thought, well, Indians can read this, well, Hindi speakers can read this, or Hindi readers can read this, but this is for people who don't know anything. So I started out with that imagined audience in my mind of the totally unaware, non-Indian, non-South Asian reader. And over time I came to realize that that was not my audience at all. My audience is usually, is Indian or South Asian, is living, this could be diaspora or living within India or Pakistan, people that either know Hindi and don't choose to read it, or know Hindi but have feel like they've lost their ability to read it, or people that speak Hindi but don't read Hindi. So these are people with very, very high knowledge levels. That's my primary readership, I came to understand. So I started to think of my readership as like this tent, this huge tent. And on the one side is like the people that really could read the book, but they just aren't doing it, and for some reason they've picked up my translation instead. They don't choose to read in Hindi, but they can. So there's a person on one side, and there are actually a lot of these people. And then on the other side is my mother-in-law in New Jersey, who doesn't know anything at all about Indian culture or Indian words or anything like that. So it's hard to keep the tent open for everyone, but I'm always imagining this whole swath of people. So I have to both explain and draw in and keep in the people that don't know anything so they don't feel lost. But I also, like people on this side, for example, if there's a Purdue couplet, they want to know what it was. They know, they are used to hearing Purdue couplets in everyday life, and they want to know which color it was, and they want to be able to criticize my translation of it. So I always give the Urdu and the English, and you can go for it and say I was wrong, that's on you, you can do it. So,
That's why this book is 2 times the length.
exactly, because I have all these original songs. I want to know what the song was before they sing it. I don't translate it for me, so I can give it in both versions. So I do that, but I've come to understand that a lot of people who are reading my translations feel this sense of loss of Hindi or Urdu that they feel they can't recapture, and they sometimes actually get annoyed at the translation because it's reminding them of this sense of loss, and that's a sense of loss that has so many reasons, but it also obviously has a colonial origin that, so in my mind I always want people to go back. I would hope that my translations will draw you back. If you have that capability to go back, do go back, and I even say that in my translator's note. And so what I'm doing partly though, when I'm thinking of my whole audience system, it's partly spinning an illusion that, so that people don't feel the sense of loss as keenly, so that they can keep them Hindi in different ways that will help people feel like they're accessing the Hindi.
That's so interesting. I haven't heard you speak about it in terms of loss before, but one of the things that's opening up for me, Daisy, is that when you read this novel, you feel as if someone is talking to you. You feel as if someone is speaking to you. It's a very oral novel, oral in 2 senses, with an O and with an AU, right? It's a novel that is spoken or heard. And I'm wondering how you thought about creating that narrative voice. Because one thing, maybe I'll just say about the novel, is that it is at parts narrated by a first-person I. We don't really know who that first person is. We are told at the very end that they are not a character in the novel, and they just seem to be speaking to us in this voice that is at times extremely seductive and cajoling, and at other times quite annoying and smug or scolding even. So how did you think about creating that sense of tone as one way of compensating for loss?
That's interesting. So I mean, to compensate for loss, yes, but because this voice, I think, is reaching out to the readers. As a translator, I often feel like I'm channeling the author, and in this case, it was a complicated act of channeling because the author speaks fluent English, but I'm not writing in her style of English. I'm writing using my own style. So it's sort of imagining this is how Geetanjali would say it if she were me. Like, so that it's kind of almost a proprietary sense that, like, I know how she would say it, and even if she disagrees with me, which she sometimes would do, if I say, no, this is how it has to be, this is how you would say it. And so I imagine Geetanjali reaching out to her audience and speaking to them, and I can just hear it in my head. I can hear how she would say it. And it's not exactly Indian English because, as I said, I have this big tent. So I'm not going to make it purely Indian English because I'm also thinking of a global spread of the English. But I still have aspects of Indian English and Hindi and so on that will be familiar to those who I spoke about on this side of the town.
That's very beautiful, because the way that you describe that the relationship between the translator and the novelist is almost like the way one hears novelists describe the relationship between between them and their characters.
Yeah.
They hear their voices in their head, and then they try to externalize those voices somehow.
And there's a third voice in here that I haven't talked about, which is Krishna Sobhati, the Hindi writer. She was an amazing author who, in a better world would have been a Nobel Prize winner. And Gitanjali dedicates the book to Krishna Sobhati, and there is actually Krishna Sobhati appears in person in the book. But she's also very much informs the main character of Ma. She is within Ma, and there are many things about her that are in there. And I translated her last novel, which she wrote when she was about 90, right before her death. And that was the book that I translated right before this. So Krishna Sobhati's voice was in my head when I was doing this, and she was in Gitanjali's head too, obviously, throughout the book. She's there. And so I was also channeling Krishnaji when I did this, and when I especially the way that Ma spoke, I would use exact phrases that Krishnaji would use when she was speaking English. So there are three voices spoken.
Well, that's perfect, because there are three, or in my mind, we have three extremely important women characters in this book. We have Ma, we have Daisy, and we have Rosie.
Right.
And so I really like, I always like trinities. There's some comfort in that for me, but I really like hearing you articulate it like that. I thought maybe I would ask a question that's derived actually from the first page of the novel, where you write, and I love this, a tale tells itself. It can be complete, but also incomplete, the way all tales are. This particular tale has a border and women who come and go as they please. Once you've got women and a border, a story can write itself. Which I think. So I actually just want to hear you speak a little bit about that, Daisy, because this is a novel that is full of women, full of borders. Why is it that once you have a woman in a border, a story can write itself? What is it about those two entities that are so conducive to telling a story?
Well, I mean, I sort of, in some ways I want to say, well, why don't you ask Gitanjali?
Well, she's not here.
She's not here.
She's not here.
So it reminds me, I read an interesting review, just a blogger wrote a review about looking at the novel through a kind of queer, critical lens. And I feel like, even though I don't think Gitanjali is that keyed into queer theory or anything like that, that is what she's writing about, is that, that borders are not a part of women's lives, and a sort of a kind of queer sensibility just rejects these borders. And so if you have the women and the border, they're going to try to cross it. And once you have people crossing borders, you have a story that makes it into a story. Story can just be two things colliding together that a whole narrative can grow out of.
Yeah, there's a really wonderful, I don't think I'm spoiling anything when I say that, to me, the real kind of beating heart of this novel comes very close to the end, when Ma gives a kind of wonderful monologue about how borders are there in order to be crossed. And to control them is to lose the sense of play, is to lose the sense of narrative, transgression that the border is always inviting. Right.
And she also reminds you that borders can also be like, a beautiful hem around a piece of fabric, right? A sari border is not like an end, it's a beautiful thing in itself. So borders can be beautiful things that invite us across or invite our eyes into them.
So I want to go back to what you said a little bit jokingly about people irritated that in the first, say, third of the book, nothing happens. Because it's true that we have a woman who is lying down and only sort of leaves and wanders off in the last little bit of that first word. But it's not true, or it doesn't seem true to me, that nothing is happening. And one of the things that we see are these just outrageously beautiful descriptions of everyday objects, of the cane that is brought for Ma to use, of the glass that scatters sort of a prism of the rainbow across
From a glass of beer.
From a glass of beer, yeah. So it seems like there's a lot happening, even if it's not sort of happening in the terms of plot. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because these are some of the richest and most beautiful descriptions in the novel.
To me, that part is actually action-packed. It's rich, it's varied. You have just a dizzying array of perspectives, including the perspectives of doors and walls, like so inanimate perspectives. And it's just full of fascinating things, but it is confusing because you don't know where this book is going, and it won't tell you where it's going because it does not appear to be going anywhere. And what Gitanjali likes to compare this part to, which I've heard other people say as well, is if you're familiar with Hindustani classical music, this is the alap. So there's like this long, drawn-out part that leads up into a work of music in Hindustani classical music called the alap, where you start to see the motifs of what are going to appear, but it takes a long time and you have to be patient and calm and just let it wash over you, and that's, I think, the same with this book.
That's really beautiful. I haven't heard you speak about it in that way, so that's really lovely to hear. And then when you get to the second part and Mom moves into Betsy's house, that becomes also, one could say, something happens, but you have these little sort of broken chapters in which what's happening is Ma sitting out on the balcony, feeling the sun, sort of penetrate her cells, or whistling to the birds. And so that's a different kind of action, and it's an action that's very much premised on or orbits this kind of fraught mother-daughter relationship, right? So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what changes in the second section.
The second section, I think of as an awakening, and that's why it's called sunlight. So like she's up and about, and the sun comes in, and there's this very lengthy description of the apartment, which is like it's an open plan, but she describes it in this most elaborate way. It's very difficult to translate, like these low walls and these windows opening out onto a green space. So it's a borderless flat, basically, and even with the outside, it feels like there are no borders because you can see the tree branches coming in, and there's this sense of peace because everything can just move freely across the space. So this is where the reawakening occurs, and all kinds of creative and interesting things happen, cooking projects and sewing projects, and this is where Rosie appears as well.
And you have this sort of fraught, like I said, a fraught mother-daughter relationship between a mother who presumably is more conservative. Presumably, I say, because we learn that is in fact not the case, and this is part of her reawakening, right? And a daughter who appears bohemian or independent, but we learn has a kind of conservative streak within her. Were there other mother-daughter relationships that you were thinking about, either in literature or more generally when you were translating?
Well, my own, I was thinking about my own, my own mother. Because what's very poignant, I think, about this section is that Ramayana very carefully focuses on the switch of roles between a mother and daughter with aging, so that the mother becomes the child and the daughter becomes the parent. And my own mother passed away right around the time that I started reading this book, so I had gone through the stage of caring for her with a very rapidly advancing disease and watching just a complete reversal of who we are. So I hate to say that anything in literature is universal because I'm annoyed by that term, but I still felt this kind of universality of the aging process changing.
I mean, that aging process changing also becomes a process of being ungendered or multi-gendered, right?
Yeah.
So there's a very funny, again, I don't think I'm giving anything away, there's a very funny moment when Ma discovers a cyst and believes she's growing a penis at 79.
Yeah.
And that's also an interesting kind of moment of, like children sometimes have trouble differentiating genitalia or believe that they have genitalia that they don't, right? So that's another way that a kind of gender order gets broken down in this, isn't it?
And there's sort of this way in which maybe when Ma says that, that sort of implies that she's grown up penis, the baby sort of worries that she somehow caught this from the transgender person or something like that, like that somehow her body was influenced, which shows her kind of undercurrent of conservatism too, that she feels like there's something catching.
Well, and then finally, in the third section, those boundaries that we've been talking about, between mother and daughter, past and present, male, female, those boundaries then get mapped interestingly onto partition, right? That becomes the kind of final boundary of the, in some ways more, overtly national boundary that we end up confronting.
Right, yeah. So in the end, she has this crazy scene, and I don't think this is a spoiler because in fact it's good to be warned about it. The first chapter of the third section is at the Wagah border between India and Pakistan, and you've got all, like not all, but many of the main Hindi, Urdu, Punjabi writers of partition literature, which is a huge genre. If you're aware of it, you know that there's just so much literature about this very rich, it's like just as much as Holocaust literature or something like this. So all these authors are assembled. There's Krishna Sobati, Bishop Sani, Intezar Hussain. All these people are sitting at the border, and then she doesn't have Mango there, who's the famous Urdu short story reader. She has Doba Tek Singh's character starts to go berserk. So Doba Tek Singh goes berserk at the border, and it's completely hallucinogenic or surreal scene where all these writers are kind of shouting, and the guard is changing. If you've ever seen that changing of the guard, it's quite a spectacle. So the guard is changing, and Doba Tek Singh is wreaking havoc. There's like blood everywhere, and that's where she introduces the physical border between India and Pakistan.
You said it here just now, and you say in your translator's note too that partition literature is a genre that is as populous as Holocaust literature. But of course, Holocaust literature has a much larger presence in the global imagination, probably, than partition literature. And I'd just like to hear you say a little bit about how certain texts get stuck in certain markets, or how it is that we, why it is that some texts can circulate a little bit more freely. And what it is that the great success, I think, of To Stand globally is perhaps teaching us about what international audiences have been acting for.
I mean, the simple answer is racism of publishing. Yes. Because these are, it's the same with Palestine. Like these things all happened at the same time. The Holocaust, the partition of Palestine and Israel were all part of the same global situation at the end of the Second World War. So these are, they're not disconnected, they're the same thing in a way. But with these narratives of people of color in the global south are simply do not reach outside of their borders. Most of the things you have to go, look, you can find these books if you want to, you can go on it and then you can search them and print on demand and so on. But they're not marketed, they're not published, they're not brought out. And I was talking to somebody in the UK about this, who is an Indian British author, and she said, well, in the UK they actually suppress the history of the partition completely. So it's really not included in textbooks, and people don't know about it, and therefore they have no apparent thirst for partition literature because they don't realize, it wasn't a disastrous artifact of the British Empire, and they simply don't know about it.
So this is, I think you said this is the first contemporary novel that you've translated, right? Normally you work on sort of classical.
Well, I translated Krishna Sobati's novel, but she wrote it when she was 90, about when she was 18. So it was sort of like a cleanse.
Right, okay. What are you working on now? What's next? Are you doing more of Patanjali's writing? What are you working on?
I'm doing some of her short stories, and I'm also doing a much earlier novel that hasn't been translated called Hamara Shahir Sporas, and it's about about, it's set in Surat, Gujarat in 1992, and it's about the riots following the demolition of the Gomri Masjid. And it's a much more politically overt novel. It's about three writers who are trying to record what's going on, but words fail them literally. So the unnamed narrator, she's always funny with her narrators, the unnamed narrator says, well, I know nothing and I'm an idiot, but I'm just going to sit here and transcribe everything that's going on, and maybe that will help set the record straight. So that's what this means. The title means Our City That Year. So kind of great. So it's not as crazy in its narrative style, like the way in the original in Reid Salami. She's breaking grammar, she's breaking words, she's making up words, she's breaking down narrative structure. She's like, I like to say she's an iconoclast, because she's just got her sledgehammer and she's breaking everything. And then she's got all the pieces there, and she says, well, let's see what we have now, and if you can make something of it, go ahead. That's kind of her approach to audience. So in fact, our approaches to audience are completely different.
Yeah, you say in your translators there actually that what you are amazed by, or what you feel like this novel foregrounds, is a word that you make up. So perhaps your approaches aren't so different. But the word that you make up is linguicity.
Yes.
The sort of the way that language works, the way that language can break down, the way that language can be made back up again. And that's what she is so interested in. I feel like that is just such a difficult task to translate when the language isn't stable, right? When it is breaking apart, when it is evolving, even as you're working through it.
It's totally unstable, and I think, when you say nothing happens in the first 200 pages, part of what's hilarious to translate is that everything is happening. Linguistically speaking, it's just like, nothing you've ever seen before. And I think it does come across in the English that, the experimentation and so on, but it may not be quite as hard to read, possibly. I mean, actually, I've been told it's not.
So I could keep talking to you about this really forever, but what I'm going to do is open it up to questions from the audience at this time. I don't have my watch with me, so I'm actually not sure how we're doing on time. We have no idea what time it is. So, but I will open it up and we can kind of go back and forth with Daisy. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Yes.
As a translator myself from my mother tongue, Kannada, I'm aware of the difficulty, almost nearly impossibility, of translating wordplay or puns from the early pages that I have tried to read in Hindi. There is a wordplay on the nahi,
Yes.
nahi, at least 10 different ways.
Yes. Yeah.
How much
You know what? Hold on.
not having read the English translation yet, I'm curious to know how you have managed to do the pun and wordplay into English.
Right there. Yeah. Here it is.
Here. Second page.
I'm gonna find it for you, but this question is, it's hard to translate wordplay and puns, and from the outset, almost the entire book is based on this one pun, and this is a perfect question to ask, because when I read that, I thought, whether or not I accept this task of translating this word will depend on whether or not I can translate the pun, right? Because what the pun is Ma is lying in bed and everybody keeps saying, get up, utho, like goodbye, that kind of thing. And she says, nahi, no. And then of course, when you're speaking colloquially, and you're saying nahi, like the H goes away. And then she transforms that slowly from nahi into nahi, which is the feminine form of new. So when it ends up, that passage ends up, I think it says, well, right? Yeah, okay. So she got up, new. Is what I wanted to, I kind of find, here it is, okay. So this is in the third chapter actually where it really plays out. So this is what I wrote, and my daughter saw me trying to figure this out. She was about 8 at the time, and I kept retyping it, and she started laughing so hard at me. But anyway, these are our best critics, right? 8-year-olds. No, I won't get up. No, I won't rise now. No, rising now. No, rise, no. So I can't even read this out loud because it's like I keep switching the spelling around slowly. So then I say now, rise, new. Now I'll rise anew. So I actually do push the word. Because sometimes we say as translators we're trying to stretch language, so I actually literally stretch no out into now, and then new, and then new. And so I just did it. I just said, okay, I'm just going to do it. And if you want to see it, it's right here, you can pass it to her. But once I figured out how to do it, then I decided I can do this book, because that's basically what the plot is, right? It's from no to new, and if I can't get there myself, then I can't translate this book. So that's when I agreed to do it after I was able to do that.
But your performance of that just actually takes me back to earlier in our conversation when we were talking about the conversational or the oral quality of this book, and seeing you struggle to actually make it oral in real life.
Yes.
It would seem to suggest that there's a kind of orality that's only present in fiction. It is a kind of wonderful, it's the way the book speaks as opposed to the way any person
It's like
speaks.
a written orality.
A written orality, that's wonderful. Yeah, yes. Hold on, let me give you this.
Just a follow-up to that question. If you go back to the etymology, the root
Yes.
of both the words, they're identical. No and na,
Yes.
and new and naya.
Right.
So these are Indo-European languages. So when you were translating,
Yes.
were you aware of the potential of using the root words to inflect
Yes.
English?
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is an interesting question because, a lot of translators who translate from European languages, they talk about how they like to use etymologies and so on. And I laugh at them because they say, well, I can't do that. That would be a sort of a ridiculous exercise most of the time. But you are right, in that case, I could do that. I could find the etymology could take me through the process, and I just had to pull and stretch the words until they got there.
I just, you had mentioned that you started out translating Latin. So I just wanted to ask, how were you able to bridge over from, I know this sounds weird, but from Western culture into Sanskritic, Eastern, Urdu, Persian? How are you, in terms of how you bridged over, how did you, what brought you over from west to east? Let me put it that way.
Okay. It's just a slow journey. When I started learning Hindi, I knew literally nothing at all about India, and I maybe had Indian food one time. I didn't do yoga, I didn't have an Indian boyfriend. I just decided at random to learn Hindi and wandered into a Hindi class, and I had studied Latin and Greek and German and French. And I wanted something that was very unfamiliar, so I purposefully went somewhere that I knew nothing about. And this was a linguistic urge, not a cultural urge. I wanted to bend my mind in terms of grammar. I wanted something harder, something more perplexing. And so I kind of wandered into a Hindi class, and in some senses I never wandered out again. I'm still in that Hindi class, and I'm still learning, and I actually love that because I felt I was a classics major at the time in college, and I felt like the walls closing in on me when I thought about what my future would look like as a class assistant. It's a very limited kind of and so it's just been a journey that I continue to be on, where I am not Indian, and I don't even claim to be bilingual because that was kind of colonialist, but I still am learning. I'm still a student, and I'm still learning, and but it's become a part of me too. So even at times I've decided not to do translation anymore, or to, when I left academia, to not work on South Asian things anymore. But I couldn't leave anymore, because you take a journey far enough, you can't go back really. And so it is a part of who I am as well.
I think we have time for one more question over here, but Daisy, are you signing afterwards?
I'm not sure what I'm signing, but if you have a book or like a piece of paper or
Yes,
something.
in the other room. So save your questions for Daisy. You have this for now.
There's the other question on here, so how we go on Twitter.
Oh,
And what different ones. Can you be called for this?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there.
So I said I'd be reading you in English and side by side.
Oh, right, yeah.
Connected to what Brian said earlier. I mean, preserving the music of the original translation is just remarkable. And a good example of being able to preserve that unlike musical quality of the original English. So that was wonderful. I'm enjoying it. It's still going, but I'm really enjoying reading the two side by side.
I love that you're doing that, and I love that people are doing that. I think it's just an amazing way to think about translation and language. So thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you for those wonderful questions. Thank you for coming. Thank you for
I'm sure that all of you will,
Take it. I love it.
I'm sure that all of you will agree with me that Merve did a fantastic job of taking And Daisy, a small first thank you for a shout out to the University of Chicago, my alma mater.
Okay, yes.
You know, I was so inspired by the statement you made that women and borders are incompatible. And someday, when the world is infinitely better and women have taken a lead role, enabling us to flow across borders, I think it will begin with extraordinary translators like you, because before we can flow, our stories have to come. And you are at the vanguard of taking stories from India, and for that, I'm telling you, our gratitude to you is infinite. May your work, as Professor Merve Emre would say, the Indian word is, may your work be powered by Shakti. Thank you. Give us a round of applause. We have more questions for Daisy. We have an author lounge, and we request you to just go there, the author lounge, with a cup of coffee, and we'll look at your questions, spend some time with her and Merve. And we'll reassemble 12 o'clock sharp and build on our next program. Thank you.